Hare Krishna. A very good morning to all of you, all the way from the UK. It's indeed a pleasure to be here in this most auspicious place, Shishi Radha Gopinath, so beautifully worshipped. I'm here because we're having today starting the European Farm Conference. And this conference was started in 2008 by some visionary devotees which thought the planet was getting into a crisis and it's better we get ready. Oh, thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Thank you. And at that time, His Holiness Shivaram Swami, Shamasundara Prabhu, I think Balabhadra Prabhu from America came, and Gaura Shakti, and all the representatives of the farms got together because there was a big crisis and global warming was a big topic with Al Gore and all that, and so the devotees were. And it was very beautifully done, and this is the 13th edition, some say 14th because one was a meeting but it's counted. So I'm very happy, full of gratitude to be here, and completely happy to see the garden in this place. It's small, but it's going in a beautiful direction. So, we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam this morning. Let's chant a little bit. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandanam Brajajana Ranjanam Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradha Yashodanandanam Brajajana Randanam Yashodanandanam Brajajana Ranjanam Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradha Yashodanandanam Brajajana Ranjanam Yashodanandanam Brajajana Ranjanam Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Shiva Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Shiva Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrikacharya Stotra Sastri Srimati Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Prem Se Goshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Ganga Mai ki Jai. Jamuna Mai ki Jai. Mathura Dham ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dham ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham ki Jai, Shri Panchatattva ki Jai, Shri Radha Madhava ki Jai, Shri Radha Gopinath ki Jai, Radhadesh ki Jai, Tulsi Devi ki Jai, Bhakti Devi ki Jai, Brihat Mridanga ki Jai. Food production for the pleasure of the deities ki Jai. Transcendental cow protection for the pleasure of the deities ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. So we'll ask for blessings to read from the scripture, the Srimad Bhagavatam, by chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the 10th canto, chapter 71, texts 14 to 19. So there's a string of verses. So I'm going to take help from the scholars to read the Sanskrit, and then we'll repeat the verse 19. You need a mic? Yeah? Okay.
Tato ratadvipa batasadinayake Karalaya pavrita atmasenaya Mridanga viryanaka shankago mukhe Pragosha goshita kakubo nirakrama.
No, just a translation.
Nivajikanchana shikiba Virachutam sahatmajapati manu subratayaju Varambara varana vilepana shaja Susambrita nivir charma panivi Naroshtrago maisha karash vataryana Karenuvi parijana varayoshita Salankrita katakutika kambalambaradi Upashkaraya jur adiyuja sarvata Valambrihadvaja patachatra chamare Varayudama parana kirita varmavi Divam shubhistumularavam vavaurave Yatarnavak shubitati mingilormi Ato muniryadu patina sabhajita Pranamyatam ridi vidadad vihayasa Nishamyata vyavasitam aritarhano Mukunda sadarashana nivritendriya Rajadutam uvachedam Bhagavan Trinayan Gira Maveshtaduta Vadrambo Taishyami Magadam.
Okay. So there are many verses. So I'll read the translation. Verse 14, continuing from yesterday, we stopped at the description of this beautiful, incredible parade with 160,000 sons and 16,108 wives. And as we see, it's a much bigger party. There is soldiers and even wash ladies were taken to wash the clothes. So it says, as the vibration resounding from mridanga, bheris, kettle drums, concha shells, and gomukhas filled the sky in all directions, Lord Krishna set out on his journey. He was accompanied by his chief officers of his corps of chariots, elephants, infantry, and cavalry, and surrounded on all sides by his fierce personal guard. Verse 15. Lord Achyuta's faithful wives, along with their children, followed the Lord on golden palanquins carried by powerful men. The queens were adorned with fine clothing, ornaments, fragrant oils, and flower garlands. And they were surrounded on all sides by soldiers carrying swords and shields in their hands. This is small purport. According to Sridhar Swami, the word Vaji indicates that some of Lord Krishna's queens were transported by horse-drawn conveyances. Verse 16. On all sides proceeded finely adorned women, attendants of the royal household, as well as courtesans. They rode on palanquins and camels, bulls and buffalo, donkeys, mules, bullock carts, and elephants. Their conveyances were fully loaded with grass tents, blankets, clothes, and other items for the trip. This is more purport. It says, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explained that the household attendants mentioned here included washerwomen and other helpers. And verse 17 says, the Lord army boasted royal umbrellas, chamara fans, and huge flagpoles with waving banners. During the day, the sun rays reflected brightly from the soldiers' fine weapons, jewelry, helmets, and armor. Thus, Lord Krishna's army, noisy with shouts and clatter, appeared like an ocean, stirring with agitated waves and timigila fish. Verse text 18. Honored by Sri Krishna, the chief of the Yadus, Narada Muni bowed down to the Lord. All of Narada's senses were satisfied by meeting with Lord Krishna. Thus, having heard the decision of the Lord and having been worshipped by him, Narada placed him firmly within his heart and departed through the sky. And finally, verse 19. With pleasing words, the Lord addressed the messenger sent by the king. My dear messengers, I wish all good fortune to you. I shall arrange for the killing of King Magadha. Do not fear. Purport. The statement Ma Baista, do not fear, is in the plural, being intended for both the messenger and the kings. Similarly, the expression Bhadram Va Baha, blessings unto you, is also in the plural, expressing a similar intent. Jai. And this is by the disciples of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanam Jnanam Shalakaya Chakshurun Militan Yena Tasmaye Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I request humbly your blessings from the seniors, from the spiritual masters, to speak on this highly elevated literature, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here, in this specific passage, we are dealing with a very special point. And the 10th canto is compared to the lotus face of the Lord. And the loving relationships between the Lord and His associates is the theme, the thread of this necklace. And here, this love is being manifested by Krishna personally with all his entourage, which is not small, as we just have 16,000 wives and 160,000 children, his personal army, which is a few Akshahinis. Everybody is going down towards this place to meet one special person, who is Yudhishthira Maharaj. And that intent is basically to help him out to be the emperor of the whole planet with this sacrifice, the Rajasuya sacrifice. So this thread of love, we could say perhaps, is the seed of the compassion. And Krishna, wanting to establish the best system in this planet for us to be in, where this transcendental morality is established, where the foundation is love for Krishna. And that's why this mission was established, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. All of us could develop in our hearts the deep feelings of love for Krishna. And everything here is produced so that we remember Krishna, we know Krishna, so we can love Him. The deity worship, the books with transcendental knowledge, our association, our way of dealing with children, so they will be raised remembering Krishna. So everything is established by our founder Acharya with a vision that in our hearts, bhakti will flourish. And that bhakti is the best gift you could give to anyone, because that's our eternal nature. There's nothing beyond that. Actually, that's the ultimate in the beyond. So here, Krishna is manifesting that same love for his intimate associate, who is none other than Dharmaraj. He is the one who rules the ethical and moral attitude in this planet. And to give a picture of that, I will go back to Canto 1. Do you have the book, the first canto, chapter 10? I do have it here, but sometimes it fails us. Yes. And in verse number 4, there's a specific mention which has all the meaning for this day, for this conference. And it says, during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira, the clouds showered all the water that people needed, and the earth, as I look to the earthman here, Thibaut, produced all the necessity of man in profusion. Due to its fatty, milky bag and cheerful attitude, the cow used to moisten the grazing grounds with milk. So that is the picture which Srila Prabhupada wanted for us. When he thought of farm community, Prabhupada was looking at this picture. And he's again and again repeating three things, right? It should be natural. What's the second one? Self-sufficient. And the third one? Depend on Krishna. So Prabhupada was always in his commentary, in his letters, he's bringing these 3 points. And these 3 points, they summarize all the ecological movements, all the regenerative farming, because everything is contained in these small sutras. Self-sufficiency, you produce locally. Your carbon footprint is very small. Your building materials are local, so it's adapted to the region. You can grow them here, the wood, everything. Your breed of cows adapted locally, so they can be here without having so many diseases, like we tried to take the Holstein to Brazil, to India, and they suffered so much because it's not their place. But they can, after a lot of work, make it, but it's a huge endeavor. So Prabhupada was trying to tell us, if you have a life which will empower you to be a cooperator with nature, your livelihood will be very simple. But if you want to compete with nature and say you're more than nature, you can defeat nature with your artifact, you can do it. You can try it. But you feel that it gets hot. Yesterday it was very hot. So global warming is not so much a discussion, it's on the skin. It was really hot that evening. And I was not used to having that temperature in Belgium. If I was in Brazil, that was a little bit from winter to summer. But here in Belgium, it was very unusual to experience such a hot temperature. I know in Italy it was very hot, and many old people died. So Prabhupada, in his purport, he will elaborate a bit more, and I'd like to share this with you. He says, the basic principle of economic development is centered on land and cows. So, don't just give me a small second. Let me find here. Okay. So, in this purport, the basic principle of economic development is centered on land and cows. The necessities of human society are, he's going to list them, food grains, fruits, milk, minerals, clothing, wood, etc. One requires all these items to fulfill the material needs of the body. Certainly, one does not require flesh and fish or iron tools and machinery. Quite interesting. Prabhupada wrote this, perhaps, is this still in India? The 10th chapter of the first canto? I'm not too sure if that's still in the 3 books, the 10th chapter. If it's not in India, it's just about when he left India. So he is meditating deeply on the mission. He's meditating, as he's thinking what message he's going to convey to us. He's deeply contemplating what should we do. During the regime of Maharaj Yudhisthira, all over the world, there were regulated rainfalls. Now this is a very important point. Rainfalls are not in the control of the human being. The heavenly king Indradeva is the controller of rains, and he is a servant of the Lord. When the Lord is obeyed by the king and the people under the king's administration, there are regulated rains from the horizon. And these rains are the cause of all varieties of production on the land. So now here we have a very important principle, which we will explore more in the conference, which is Yagya is the source of opulence. And from Yagya and a righteous king, a devotee leader, then you get a devoted citizenship. And that pleases Indra, and that pleases the Lord. So the cycle of abundance is activated. Okay, so Prabhupada is very strong. He's saying the rains do not come from the forest, the rain do not come from the clouds, the rain comes from the yagya. The clouds and the forest are just vehicles for that power, that Shakti to manifest. Not only do regulated rains help ample production of grains and fruits, but when they combine with astronomical influence, there's ample production of valuable stones and pearls. Another very important information. Everybody's looking for gold, for diamonds. And the science of Vedas knew when and how they're produced. In South Africa, they washed from the coast. Some beaches are closed because diamonds just appear. And this is known. Grain and vegetables can sumptuously feed man and animals, and a fatty cow delivers enough milk to supply a man sumptuously with vigor and vitality. If there is enough milk, enough grains, enough fruit, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, then why do people need cinemas, house of prostitution, slaughterhouse, etc.? We tend to separate cinema from the rest today, but Prabhupada put it in the same line. What is the need of an artificial luxurious lives of cinema, cars, radio, could be social media today, flesh and hotels? Has this civilization produced anything but morally, individually, and nationally? Has this civilization enhanced the cause of equality and fraternity by sending thousands of men into a hellish factory and the war fields at the whims of a particular man? Here's another very important point. We are talking about the 60s, and Srila Prabhupada is equating factories and war. This thought only is developed in the late 70s when Fritz Haber, who was the one who converted ammunition into pesticides and fertilizers, became the one who transformed the whole war industry into the farming industry. Because there was nowhere to put that anymore. It was finished. They had heaps of it. So he needed to get that gone. So he started this whole idea that urea, you can produce, it's necessary. So the Green Revolution, everything in that, if you look at the curve of machinery in agriculture, it's from the 50s to the 60s when it explodes. So Prabhupada is already aware, in the same line he's putting factories and war. And we'll see in the seminar, I try to present how agriculture is a product of the war industry today. The design, the way it's done, every pest is my enemy, I must annihilate them. It's a war. So Prabhupada is here putting factories in the same line. It is said here that the cows use the moisture, used to moisten the pasturing land with milk. Because their milk bags were fatty and the animals were joyful. Do they not require therefore proper protection for joyful life by being fed with a sufficient quantity of grass in the field? Why should men kill cows for their selfish purposes? Why should men not be satisfied with grain, fruits and milk, which combined together can produce hundreds and thousands of palatable dishes? We experienced that on Janmashtami, right? The whole altar becomes like 108, sometimes 200 preparations. Why are there slaughterhouses all over the world to kill innocent animals? Maharaj Parikshit, grandson of Maharaj Yudhisthira, while touring his vast kingdom, saw a black man attempting to kill a cow. The king at once arrested the butcher and chastised him sufficiently. Should not a king or executive head protect the lives of the poor animals who are unable to defend themselves? Is this humanity? Are not the animals of a country citizens also? Then why are they allowed to be butchered in organized slaughterhouses? Are these the signs of equality, fraternity, and non-violence? Therefore, in contrast with the modern advanced civilized form of government, The autocracy, like Maharaj Yudhisthira, is by far superior to so-called democracy in which animals are killed and a man less than an animal is allowed to cast votes for another less than animal man. Prabhupada is very graphical in his. We are all creatures of the material nature. In the Bhagavad Gita it said that the Lord himself is the seed-giving father of this material nature, is the mother of all living in all shapes. Now he's getting to a point which I want to emphasize. Thus, mother, material nature, has enough foodstuff both for animals and for man, by the grace of the Father Almighty Sri Krishna. The human being is the elder brother of all living beings. And he finalized, human civilization should depend on the production of material nature without artificially attempting economic development to turn the world into a chaos of artificial greed and power only for the purpose of artificial luxuries and sense gratification. Then use a very strong line. And as we read verse 4, 5 and 6, the whole mission of cow protection and farming is revealed. And verse 6 has a specific sentence which says, I'll finalize here, there is full cooperation between man and God, and man and nature, as exemplified by King Yudhisthira, can bring about happiness, peace, and prosperity to the world. The attitude of exploiting one another, the custom of the day, will only bring misery. Srila Prabhupada ki. After such words, we can just say any questions, but I'll just say a few words. The disciples of Srila Prabhupada took this very seriously. If you study the history of our movement, New Vrindavan, Hitanagari, Sharanagati, all these initial projects, they were very serious. To a point when New Vrindavan, they were producing 4,000 liters, 1,000 gallons of milk a day. It's more than all of us together today. All the ISKCON farms cannot have 4,000 yet. That's how serious they're taking it. So Prabhupada, he was aware that milk is an essential product for civilization, and he wrote extensively on milk. At the same time, he was completely aware that you cannot have milk without agriculture, without development of food and production. And that's the basis of community. Because you have abundance, you can produce. But one of the issues we faced is because all the disciples were very enthusiastic, but very young. And also at that time, when I research and I speak to them, like I spoke with Varshana Swami in New Vrindavan, or I spoke with Paramananda Prabhu in the US, I went to his home to ask him personally, so what did Prabhupada tell you that our mission is? Is it cow protection? He said no. And I was, no? Is it ecology? He said no. And I said, well then tell me, what was the message that Prabhupada told you? Do you want to know what he said?
Yes.
He passed away recently in America. He said Prabhupada wanted us to live together and worship Krishna and have everything we need from the land. That was his project. And he told me, and he said, if we do this, the whole world will look for us, at us, as an example. Then I asked Varshana Swami the same question. Varshana Swami was one of the first residents of New Vrindavan. And he replied with a little story, which I'll tell you. He said, the devotees on the plow department, that was what it was called. The plow department was the department of the cows. They were very excited and they were really strong about living from nature, not using any technology. They were like very stout about that. very austere. And there was another group of devotees who thought it was important to have facilities to impress the visitors, the civilized and educated people of the country of America. So they started a project called the Palace of Gold. You may have visited, some of you. It's a beautiful piece of work, collective work. And he said that when that happened, the whole plow department kind of came to a halt because all the focus, energy, money, attention was there. And he replied that Prabhupada would come with his entourage of sannyasis and everybody would look at the palace and kind of neglect and forget the plow department. So all the devotees in the plow department, they were very discouraged and a little bit sad and depressed, thinking, have we missed it? Have we lost it? Have we drifted our mission? Is it a mission drift? They were thinking like that. And one day, Prabhupada decides to walk near Vrindavan as usual. He didn't take anybody, and he had his cane. And all of a sudden, the plow department realized that Srila Prabhupada was walking through the fields of New Vrindavan. So they run, it's everybody, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. So they all run after Srila Prabhupada. And he's describing, it's very beautiful how he described. And Prabhupada is walking, all of a sudden he realized he's being followed, so he turns around. And there's this kind of number of devotees from the farm with their dhotis full of cow dung, very short dhotis, only like half the length. And they're around Prabhupada looking at him. And then Prabhupada stops and looks at them. He gets his cane, puts on the ground. Not a word. They make a semicircle, he says, like around him, like little ducklings around the mother. And Prabhupada looks at them, and he's almost emotion in the eyes, and he says, you are so fortunate. You are in the holy dham, worshipping the Lord and taking care of his cows. And then he continued to walk. So the plow department started to breathe again. Oh, we have some value. And he said that was a historical division in the movement, because at that point, all the attention really went to the Palace of Gold and to the preaching and to the becoming. And it came back to Europe too when Srila Bhagavan and all the other disciples were buying palaces like this one. We had beautiful palaces around Europe. Some of them had, in France, had golden taps. Hear that? I have not seen it. But it must be very majestic. And the whole thought was, if we have these properties, we will impress the high-class thinking audience. And it's true, it has an effect. But it so happened that the whole world starts shifting and thinking that perhaps we are not so right in our assumption that industrialism will be the answer to our problems. And now ecology and movement is surfacing, the vegan movement, the youth movement. Basically the youth have understood that they have been cheated very badly by their antecessors. Because usually you receive a planet and you give it better to your children. But we're giving a more trash planet to our children. Every day the number of animals killed is bigger, the amount of plastic is bigger, the waste is bigger, the pollution is bigger. So we are handing our planet worse than we got. So they're feeling cheated by us. So therefore, their thing is ethos. We're about changing the world, we're about fixing the world. Not running away from it and making a separate universe. We are looking into fixing it. I want to see how I can change the world with my abilities, my talents. That's the mentality of the youth. Therefore, now it's the time when the youth is coming to us and looking, hey, how do you produce your food? Let me see. How do you produce your milk? What is your carbon footprint? That's the youth. And there are many more things which we present in the seminar, and you're all welcome to come if you like. It's an open seminar. So Krishna wants the best for us, and Prabhupada is embodying that instruction by offering an opportunity for us to connect to Mother Earth. And I'll finalize with a comment from Tejas Prabhu. Tejas was very close to Prabhupada in India, and some of the farm development was given to him in Hyderabad, India. He is now in New Talavan. He has cancer, he's kind of at terminal days. And there was a discussion on the communication thread of New Talavan about how they should do it. Right? And he spoke many things, but the last thing he said I'd like to share with you. He said once he was in Hyderabad with Prabhupada, and he was just listening, and Prabhupada says, we have to show the world that we're going to sit on the lap of Mother Nature and live off the ground. So that sentence, to live off the lap of Mother Nature, is extremely significant. And we won't have time to explore this whole seminar, because this ties in with all the thought process where you're understanding nature rather than imposing yourself in nature. The permaculture movement, the regenerative farming, they're not trying to intervene in the world as the controller and total decider of what nature should be like, but rather understanding nature and working with nature, not against nature. And there's so many biological implications on this statement. There's so many agricultural implications in this statement, to sit on the lap of Mother Nature. That to unpack that is a whole seminar. And actually we are producing a course called Systems of Abundance in the Vedic Perspective. The cow protection course is called Taking Care of Krishna's Cows. It's already in the second group, very successful. We just had a class on Monday. And we really suggest that we start studying this, because that's what Prabhupada had in mind. He had in mind that we become very skilled and very technical and scientific on these things. Not just a sentiment, but bringing to shape, as Shamasundara Prabhu is here likes to say. Bringing from sentiment to a shape, a format. We know what you're doing, why we're doing. And it makes sense to any scientist from this place which comes here. You can explain to him why you're doing this. That's the next step. And this course is just the introduction towards developing a whole set of knowledge and network which we need in our community, society, to be able to respond to this proposal of Srila Prabhupada, to live off the land. We need to be equipped with knowledge. We need to be equipped with understanding how nature works. You cannot sit on the lap of a mother without understanding and loving her. Isn't it, mothers? When your child is naughty, and you have to slap him a little bit until he behaves and he can sit nicely. So, that's the proposal, and that's what we're doing today. Today, we are getting together with some of the leaders of farms in Europe, and we're discussing the way forward. We are listening to the reports. We are bringing in new perspectives, and it all starts today. So on that note, I'd like to end and maybe open to some discussion and questions, because the session starts at 10, so we need to end right on time. Any questions, comments, corrections? Is there a microphone? Yeah.
Thank you for setting the stage for our conference. You mentioned Tejas Prabhu, and I'm so sorry to hear of his condition. He told me once that he did a lot of research about self-sustaining community and all things related. And he said that he came to the conclusion that one cannot have a self-sustaining project with less than 100 devotees. And I always remembered that and thought, oh, okay. So maybe you could comment just very briefly on this, which of course takes into the subject of community in relation to living on the lap of nature.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a beautiful question, actually, because we are always wondering how to make a community. He wrote a book. Unfortunately, it never got published. He was always trying to finish it more and more. And I'm not sure if he will publish, but he did send me like a draft copy of that book, of at least this stage it's in. And he has many comments. One of them is that we are all kind of already infected by some kind of commodity that is very hard for us to shift to a simple living. And he pinpoint many elements which would stop us from developing. One of his points was we should target farmers which are already used to this lifestyle and then create a farmers movement with them. That's one of his theses in that book. And to your point about the number of people and his comment on 100, well, when you look at New Vrajadam, I think New Vrajadam, Hungary, I should have people from New Vrajadam, Hungary here, our Hungarian representative of the farms. We see that there's a certain number of inhabitants which allows it to function nicer. And when I was there, they always said, we have about 150 residents. And that number didn't change over a lot of times. I said, is this a number really, or are you just using as a reference number? Is it 150?
It's probably less. But
okay, so the number fluctuates. But a lot of people live on the village too, right? So a phenomenon happened is that you have the farm community of New Vrajadam, but many people didn't want to be a missionary on the farm, so they had an option to live on the village. Now, when we think of farm or community development, I think one of the fundamental points which we miss is the intention. That's written by Diane Leaf Christian, a writer from America, that finding the intention of the community is as vital as having a community, because that intention is what's going to keep you over time, remind you, oh, I have to do this because that's our intention. Like we are Hare Krishna, so we remind, we have to come to Mangalarti, I have to do this. So the intention is to become a devotee. But in that intention, there are many points missing. Because you could be a devotee in many different situations. And you may come to Mangalarti, you may not come to Mangalarti, you may come to the class, you may not come to the class, you may chant 16, you may not chant 16. So she was talking about an intention which has many dimensions, including an economical one. So what I've observed about community development, both with her as Jen, the Global Eco-Village Network in Finhorn when we were there, is that to build a community, it's really about having people on the same page. And those people, they need to have something Christine called social glue. Now, social glue is such an interesting concept. And I asked her, so what is social glue, Diana? And she said, do you know when you play volleyball with a friend? How do you feel? I said, great, that's social glue. And then she got an example. Do you know when you read Bhagavad and you're a scholar and you find another scholar and you start discussing Sloka and the Goswamis, how do you feel? I'm behind you. How do you feel? Good? That's your area? Study. I know Guru Maharaj, when he's discussing with other scholars, he just forgets the time. So she calls that social glue. And when you have enough of that, you can go through a crisis. And the description is social glue is like flesh on you. If you hit flesh, it hurts, but it recovers. But what happens when you hit the bone? It's unbearable, isn't it? Or the nerve. So how would you feel if you're constantly being hit on your nerve or on the bone? You want to stay in that place? No. So that's why so many people leave. Without social glue, any crisis hits the bone. And the person immediately feels that. She doesn't feel accepted, she's not part of it, she wants to leave. But when you have social glue, then you say, hey, I'm cared for. You think about me. Now just think of the verse. Lord Krishna, with, 500,000 people, is going to help his friend, his devotee. Isn't that social glue? So then it keeps the community together. And that's something which is coming on our fourth course called Intentional Community Dynamics. That's the fourth level. First one is taking care of Krishna's cows. Number 2, we are now developing systems of abundance in the Vedic perspectives. Number 3, ecological house building and ecological solutions. And number 4, intentional community dynamics. This is the 4 courses, foundational courses, which I have personally taken the task of writing them together with Shamasundar Prabhu for the cow protection. And it was so interesting because actually I learned that we have a community, a beautiful community, a talented community, but there's no forum to connect. And the cow protection course took 4 years, but it was such a bonding activity, wasn't it? So we had Hungarians writing, people from different parts of the world, and then people from Israel recording, and people from India speaking, and different parts. It all came together, and the result was very nice. We have some students who are taking the course, the second batch. So similarly, I'm trying to look for devotees who are talented in farming, in some system of production, and we'll go along, ecological building and sustainable intentional communities. So we hope to create a platform to unify this, to offer back to the society. Because there's so much knowledge, so much talent, but they need to be empowered together in a network. And that's the index. Is that all right? One more comment or question, or we have 2? Okay.
Yes, my first inspiration I found with Aurobindo's Auroville and Findhorn. My first inspiration was with Aurobindo's Auroville and Findhorn, because I'm also interested for about 15 years in eco-villages. What is your thought on Auroville and Findhorn?
Wow, that's a big question. I have never personally been to Aurobindo's Auroville. I've seen photos, discussed with people. It's on my list to go. I think Guru should make a point in visiting Auroville. Have you been? No, he hasn't. Okay, you haven't also been. Okay. What has happened in Auroville is something quite magnificent, in the sense that the intention is very clear. So, because of the intention very clear, the design became very clear. So if you look from satellite, everything is designed in a very fluid way, which conveys harmony, flow of energy. So even if there are relationships which are not function inside, but they're inside a system which was designed to be like that, so they end up going back to harmony. And also they're very good with ecological building houses, and they became a municipality by the government. So I believe design is a very important point, and Vastu is a very important point. So if we start designing our communities with intention, that's going to be very nice. Findhorn, it's more into the social and economical dynamics and political dimensions. They have spread themselves into, I don't know how many, but dozens of NGOs who have different government activities. So they are present in the, we call ONU, the United Nations. They are present in all these forums through different NGOs. And they come together in the Finhord Foundation. So GEN is one of the arms, the network of the eco-villages. They have forestry departments, they have restoration departments, they have so many departments, and they're a very rich foundation. So why not the devotees of ISKCON have something like that? We have very, very affluent communities like the Manor. We have two exalted representatives and affiliates, members. We have New Vrajadam, we have New Vrindavan, we have Govardhan Eco-Village, we have New Govardhan. These are very affluent communities. Kenya is a very affluent community, connected to the UK. So if we are to come together, needless to say that Ambani, the richest man in Asia, is connected to ISKCON. So if there was a will and a desire to make a foundation in ISKCON which will deal with ecology and house building and ecological living, and that's huge. That's a huge activity. It can be enough service for so many. Yeah, we have. Okay, I'll say that. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You can pass the microphone to Shamasundar and to Mataji here, and we'll end to start the conference.
Just on that point of social glue, there's a verse that resonates with me, which is about this glue that we haven't put it so well in our society, and I think it answers why our communities are not glued together. And it's the verse in the Bhagavatam, so it's about Krishna, and it's about having housing, about land, having facilities for children, having facilities for accumulation of assets, and for social interaction. Griha Kshetra Sutta Apta Vriter. So it's a very important verse. Prabhupada talks that to someone who wanted to become a household. I said, this is what a household life means. It means house, it means economy, it means facilities for your children, it means having some social interaction, and it means accumulation of assets. So that's kind of, in the Bhagavatam, it's kind of that's material life. But a grihasta stays there, but a grihamaidi is tied there. But as a society, if we want our communities to develop, and particularly agricultural communities, we have to create strong economies to allow people to live in a house, to provide for their children, to have accumulation of assets. In other words, they can have a car, not just have a trowel to work in the fields, and they can also have social interaction. And if we don't provide it, then they're going to go somewhere else for those facilities. So our burning need is to keep working on establishing these things. What I've noticed in our communities, Europe, everywhere, every house is full. So if we have more houses, more devotees will go to our communities. But they can't stay there unless you enable them to have an economy. And they won't stay there unless you have facilities for their children. And they can't stay there if they have to live like paupers. They have to be able to accumulate assets. And they won't stay there if there's no social dynamics. So this verse in the Bhagavatam is the key to gluing ourselves into this social dynamics.
Very good comment. I came across one speaker, and she was telling me what the word grihamedi means. Do you know what it means?
Yeah, it's an agricultural term, because the oxen are tied to a central post, and they're forced to go around and thresh the grain.
So the medi is that pole. So if you're tied to your griha, you keep around your griha and you don't go deeper. So I found that a very interesting analogy, that we shouldn't be griha medis tied to the pole. We should be grihastas, which is more like serving.
You stay in the house.
Yes.
But you're not tied to it.
Yes. Okay, very good. We have one last, and then we have to go for breakfast and for the conference.
I was wondering if it's possible, maybe Krishna society to, on a world scale, that the cities that we already have here on Earth, to convert them to be more natural-like, because if we keep building wherever there is already nature, then this is also not good for the nature. We need the nature. We need the trees. We need everything green, and maybe Krishna society can talk with people there already in the government. They're managing the cities world already has to convert them in more natural-like places, and it will be better for our kids also, because if it's not good to keep building every space we see to build.
Yes, you got a very good point. Thank you. And actually, remind me something. I was in Brazil in March with Governor Village in the G20 is a big meeting of the biggest nation economies, and they created a C20, Civil 20, and they invited NGOs from all over the world to give input. This like 3-4 years ago. And last year in India, they invited Governor Village along with another entity to manage one petal, which was called Food Systems, Hunger and Poverty. And they did a brilliant job. So they were invited to come to Brazil for the G20, C20 meetings, and I was invited to go with them in the organization. This is already happening.
Yeah.
Governor Village is already part of many government programs, and they're already doing that. And the intention is that ISKCON will take bigger and bigger roles in these forums. So Gauranga Prabhu was pushing me, you should put the ministry in the United Nations, writing it there, and start pushing it. And I see a benefit, because if you have a presence, like New Vrajadam, Hungary is already present in many levels, in Europe, in the United Nations Forum. So we need to be visualized, but to be visualized, we need to do the homework. We can't speak without having our own house a little bit organized. So we are on the way, okay? Well, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for your patience. I hope I said something beneficial. And now we'll go for prasadam, and at 10 we'll meet at the yoga hall for this conference today. So Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.